All right, this is Rousey and this is Izzy, and there's some treats in my hand, so you're going to be both very interested. This is the roadmap to success. Remember, I need to take a couple pictures of them together. Okay, so basically, they're boxers. They're very energetic, and I think that they really didn't have a lot of structure from their guardians. I think they were confused in thinking that they were the top of the food chain here, but it's actually not. And so they've gotten in some fights. Not real fights, but disagreements over stuff, and they're jealous. She's more jealous than she is, but she's a little bit more of your insecure dog, so that's why I went over the video above, is to teach her how to stay. I also showed, so practice that. Remember, I'd like you, the guardians, practice to stay, each one of them 3 times a day with each dog. And each practice session, at first, when you get to 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes, but at first it's going to be like a minute worth of practice. Each one of you with each dog 3 times a day. You really want to do a lot of micro training sessions, and eventually you get to the point, and carefully your finger's not in front of the, there you go. Eventually you're going to elongate it, and they'll be at different rates and speeds and iterations, that's fine. So follow the instructions there. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's a video specific for that. Now I also went over how to teach the dogs to focus. If you forget how to do that, message me. I have hundreds of videos of me doing that I can share with you guys and show you how to do it. But for the focus, I think it's simple enough. You guys both got it really well. What I'd like you to do is try to, well, maybe for the stay, maybe try to do that each one of you with each dog twice a day, since there's only 2 of you and 2 dogs. The focus, try to do that also twice a day. And don't do them in a row. Sprinkle them around. And do them at different locations. But the idea is we want to get up to, with the end of the week, we want to get up to the point where we have the 20 seconds on that second movement of the stay. And then we can, and then you can, don't start using it until you get up to 20 seconds in that second movement. Then when the dogs start to get animated, or you see that there's a dog walking by and they're starting to stare and they're getting ready, you say focus, they stop and they look up at you. The key with the focus or distracting a dog is to distract them way before they get to the point where they're actually reactive. Once they start barking and lunging, you push too far. So if that's the case, you want to move them away from whatever they're barking or lunging at, around something that blocks their sight. Then you would do a little, give them a second, because they're off cortisol in their blood. It'll be hard for them to calm down. And give them a minute, and then practice a focus exercise. Have them sit, lie down, do a couple obedience exercises, and then you can bring them back out. But anytime your dog is reactive, you want to immediately increase the distance between them and whatever they're reactive to. Now, she doesn't like certain men. I just went, and I can touch her on top of the head. She's not biting me, but dogs don't like being petted on top of the head. Now, there's a couple of men, sit, that she's not a big fan of. And a couple of these men like to engage with her and talk to her and have higher energy. And the more that, if a dog doesn't want to engage with you, and the more you try to interact with them, the more they're not going to want to engage with you. So one of the best things we can do, if we have any other friends that come by, or people that she doesn't like for whatever reason, they should ignore her completely. Don't look at her, no eye contact. Don't try to give her pets. Don't try to give her treats. Don't try to touch her. Just act like she's not even there. After you do that enough, the dog will become interested in that person, then come up to them. For the dogs, just like us, if I go ask a girl out, she's in the driver's seat. If she comes and asks me out, I'm in the driver's seat. So we want the dog to go up to the guest, and that puts the guest into more of the driver's position. At that point, when she's doing that on her own, then you could give the guest a couple of treats. And when she comes over, they could just kind of hold it off like that and let her lick it off with their hand. I'm not looking at her, I'm just offering it, and then I'm going to hold my hand there. Usually a dog will lick it a second time like that, and then wait for the dog to walk away. Let me see. So the more that we engage, the harder it's going to be for her to ignore. Because they're both very excitable, we're going to probably make a lot better progress if we separate them and practice activities with them separately. Just for the short term as we train them. Remember, anytime you're training your dog, you want to break the activity down into small individual steps and start out with the easiest variation of it possible. So if you're going to have a house full of people over for a cocktail party, that's a lot for your dog to deal with. Maybe the first time we just practice ourselves, we practice putting a tray here with a little bit of lunch meat on it when we're just at home. And so we get to correct the dog, and we can help them practice. Just because something's nose reach doesn't mean you can get it. Then the next time we might do that, we might actually do that where we have a couple of those in different places around the house. And we're just watching. You're watching these two, I'm watching these two. Anytime the dogs come close, we use those escalating consequences: hiss, stand up, march. And we teach the dog that just because the food's there doesn't mean you can have it. Next stage is I might actually have one of our guests come, who's a friend, and have them practice playing the part of a guest during the party. Play a little of the music, kind of change the ambiance the way you're. So we're gradually making it more and more realistic until by the time you actually have a party, the dogs already know how to behave because we taught them how to behave. Now, we can also put dogs in a position to succeed. So one of the things we can do if we're going to have a party is take them to doggy daycare for the day. Dogs sleep 17 hours a day, so that means only 7 hours every 24-hour period they're awake. Flop. And so if we take them to daycare for 8 hours, now they've eclipsed that. They come in, they're tired, they're going to have this energy, and people are going to come in and go, oh my God, your dogs used to be crazy. Now look how chill they are. What happened? You're like, of course, we hired doggone problems. They fixed our problems. But no, we put them in position to succeed by getting the exercise that they need, and we help them practice what they needed to do. Now, speaking of exercise, I'd like the guardians to start practicing or start keeping an exercise journal. Just get a spiral notebook, write the date at the top, and then write both dogs' names, and write down the time and the number of fetches, the long the walk is. They both like chasing the laser, so if it's nighttime, we can actually take the laser, go stand on the deck, and run around, laps around, and so count the number of laps. If we go for a walk, put the number of minutes for it. And then if they get in an argument or they bark really crazy or something happens, write down the time and when that happened as well with a little bit of detail. And do this for about 3 or 4 weeks. After a couple days, you'll start being able to start seeing patterns. Hey, when we haven't exercised her this amount, she starts getting boisterous. When I haven't done it with her this amount, she gets upset. And so we'll find a common, and at the end of each day, give a letter grade for each dog separately. And maybe the guardians would actually keep a separate notebook so that they don't influence each other. Well, what'd you give Izzy? I gave her a B today. Oh, I gave her a C minus. And eventually you guys will kind of calibrate your grades together. But it's okay if one of you feels like it was a C and one of you feels like a D. Dogs are very good at compartmentalizing. I can get away with this person, but I can only get away with this person. So we want to be uniform, which is why we talked about rules and how to enforce them consistently. For some of the rules, not being allowed on the furniture for at least 30 days or as long as the problem's going on, and then invitation only on the furniture and only for good behavior. So if I invite the dog up and it starts misbehaving, barking, it has to get down. Now, usually to make a dog get down, what I would do is I would just toss a treat on the ground in front of the dog. When it goes and gets it and licks it up, I would say the word off. Also remember to go around your house and do the directional commands. Go to each room, each portal of the room, touch the dog's nose with a treat, and then if the doorway is right here, I toss the treat there. Out. It just went out of the room. And then when it comes back to me, I would it would come back in, I touch the nose again and toss another treat and help the dog go through that over and over. And I would do that in the kitchen and all the areas that you're gonna, like one of the rules is dogs not allowed to be in the kitchen when we're preparing food, not allowed at the door, on the carpet around the kitchen table. So we go over there with the dog there with no food present, we help them practice that behavior in the easiest scenario possible. Another rule, the dog has to sit at the door, sit. So we're gonna go to the door and say sit once. If it doesn't sit, I walk within 3 seconds, I walk away. Don't repeat the command multiple times. And then I wait 1 minute, but be sitting somewhere. If you're standing, you look like you're waiting for the dog. After 1 minute, go back to the door and say sit as an order. If they don't sit, after 3 seconds, walk away. This time for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, next time for 8 minutes. And as soon as the dog sits at the door, you go and let him out. So after a while, the dog will do that on both sides. Yes. And they say you don't like it on top of the head. Now the guardians notice that she gets kind of bug eyes. When a dog's going to react, a lot of times they'll see a green film that will cover their eyes. The eyes get really big, which it makes it hard for me to read King Charles Cavalier Spaniels because their eyes look like that all the time and they almost never bite. But also you'll see the ears rotate forward, the hackles, the hair between the shoulder blades and between the hips will go up. The dog will start staring, often with a lowered head, or will stare off to the side, not looking at the person that they're actually warning. They'll start breathing heavily. They'll stop breathing. Their pupils will dilate. So these are some of the signs you're looking for. If you see these signs from your dog and we don't intercede, the dog will eventually lunge and nip because it's warning the person's not listening. So we need to be able to read our dog. And one of the things you might want to do is if there's something that does trigger it, is have one of the guardians off to the side, hold your camera sideways, and then film it. And make sure you can film that you see the person in the foreground and the dog in the background. And then you can start seeing, oh, when the guy did this, the ears came forward. The lips went back. The head lowered. They started holding its breath. And then you start recognizing the signs. Now you know what to look for. And when you see those, then you can tell your dog, focus. Focus. And we can redirect their attention away before they get into trouble. Also, she doesn't like walks. And the guardians were using a prong collars on them because they're just so strong and powerful they didn't know any better, and we had a trainer that told them to use those. I never like using them. I like the guardians to actually teach them to walk, and I went over a bunch of steps in the house to help the dog stay calm before we take them on a walk. Now there's a martingale collar that we can use. I don't actually have any here with me, but let me know if that's something you want. I can show you, send them to you, and I can show you videos and show you how to use those. But it's a pain-inducing device, and it actually causes stress and anxiety in the dog. And because it bites them, if I'm a dog and I start pulling on the leash and I see this guy walking towards me, I think the guy caused the pain in my neck, not that I pulled on the leash. So it creates a lot of confusion. I also went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Sit, that's passive training. I wait for the dog to offer a behavior that it wants, that it does organically on its own. She's going to LAY in a minute. When she does, I'll pet her again. So what it is remember you have a window of 3 seconds to correct or reward your dog for them to have the ability to make the connection. So as soon as she LAYs, I'm going to start petting her and I'm going to say the word crash. Again, whenever possible, try to come up with funny command words. Crash. Now I can pet her anywhere I want. I just don't want to pet her on top of the head, which she actually doesn't like anyways. Most dogs don't. And I'm just going to say the word just crash. And I can pet her for an hour after this if I want. Now this is passive training, so every time your dog comes, pet it and say come. Every time it sits, pet it and say sit. Every time it lays down, pet it and say crash. If it brings you a specific toy, you can call it octopus or whatever it is. Goes to the dog bed, we call that beach or whatever they are. So we're just creating a vocabulary for the dog. Now the other one is petting with a purpose. So if she comes up and nudges me or with her nose or scratches at me with her paws at me and barks at me, jumps up in my lap and I pet her, anything our dog is doing when we pet it was what we're reinforcing. So I'm teaching her that jumping up on me is the way to ask for attention. Now I went through an exercise and I would recommend you put tape down at the point where you're going to step on the leash and point the tape down where the person's supposed to turn sideways. I have a bunch of videos for that, so if you forget how to do that, message me and I can share those videos with you as well. But practicing that a lot when we have people come over will be really helpful. The men that she doesn't react to are not people to do that because she probably walks away from them. And so that's fine. Just let her walk away and keep the distance. But practice that door exercise at any time that she's going to be jumpy, and eventually she'll learn. And the great thing about it is, again, we're not micromanaging her. We're just, when she sits, we become interested in her and pet her. As soon as she gets up or shows excitement, we lose interest. We step out of her reach and turn to the side. But for petting with a purpose, if she demands attention, I pet her, I'm validating that you're in charge of me. And that's one of the reasons I think both these dogs are confused as their position. So from now on, if the dog nudges me, I'm going to give it a counter order. Tell it to sit or lay down. When it lays down, I'm going to pet it and say crash. And then I can pet her for an hour after that. After a while, the dog will come up and start offering that behavior to come and sit in front of the human as a way of saying, hey, I'd like you to pet me. Now we've taught it a more polite way of asking for that. So make sure when he does that, as long as the dog's okay with the human reaches over and pets under the chin. Let me see. We also showed how to create a conditioned emotional response. These are wipes to help with allergies. And so we have to wipe out this part of the dog's eyes, and she does not like the smell or the sensation out of it. So I went through creating a conditioned emotional response, which is basically, I went like this. When she looked at it, I gave her a treat, and then we moved it away. And at first, we just kept on offering it. We went to this side, then this side. And so all she has to do is look at it, and then it goes away. She gets a treat, and it goes away. The next step was when I went like this, and I held it here until she actually initiated contact with her nose. Then I gave her a treat and pulled it away. And eventually we did it with this most of the way open, but not all the way open. And then we did it with it all the way open. I think the Guardian, because she needs to do this, there we go. Normally she hates this and she would move away from it, but I've never put it on her. And the Guardian, because she needed to do this and didn't know how to do it any better, would kind of hold her and put it on, which is a lot of people do those things, but that's going to validate the dog's fear. So the more that we can just create that conditioned emotional response by breaking down individual steps, the dog looks at it or touches it or smells it and then gets a treat. After a while, you can pull this thing out and the dog will come over and like, wipe my stuff down, give me those treats. We created a positive association just through using positive reinforcement. Okay, what else am I forgetting? One of the rules is the dog's not allowed to go in the kitchen when we're preparing food. Well, when we're preparing food, we're focused on preparing our food. So what I'd like the Guardian to do is use the escalating consequences to move her out, but I'd also like to practice having her leave the kitchen by tossing the treats like I explained. Do that for, I usually do that for 2 treats for every portal for each dog. So do it with each dog separately and just grab a bag of them and walk around the house and have the dog exit every room or every area that you're going to ask it to move away from. And then after that, what we want to do is before we're actually cooking, we actually practice or pretend cook. Maybe grab a piece of roast beef, microwave about 20 seconds and pull it down, put it on the counter. And the dog's attracted, wants to come in, and as soon as it crosses the boundary, we march towards the dog and we stop enforcing at the point of where the boundary is. And once the dog sits or lies down, then we put the roast beef away and then we can actually start preparing our actual meal. We help the dog learn the behavior we want them to have. Let me see. Yes, I see you staring a little bit. Is that your crazy spot? Did I find it? Is it right there? Is that where it is? Oh, yes, I can see that. Oh, yes. Okay. Well, exercise. We definitely would like to increase the dog's exercise, like I talked about the exercise journal. They both like chasing the laser, but they were a little bit more intense than I would typically like, so I would like them chasing the laser separately. Because she likes to fetch, or she likes to fetch? She likes to fetch. She's the anti-fetcher. So for her, we might run the laser up and down the stairs while somebody else is playing fetch with her out in the yard. And again, count the number of fetches, but you'll eventually find through your exercise journal the right combination of exercise that each dog needs in order to be successful. Now, let me see. The last thing is, if we want to teach her to heel or walk with a loose leash, we'd be happy to set up a training session to follow up with that. And if we need to, we can do the daycare training or whatever. I can share some videos. It just takes a lot of practice and repetition, but it's pretty awesome to be able to just tuck the leashes in your back pocket, walk down the street, checking out your phone, drinking a cappuccino or whatever it is. So if you want to do that, let us know. All right, well, this is Izzy, who doesn't like being petted on top of her head, but she has no problem with me, and Rousey, and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.